Hello everyone and welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh. This is the official podcast of NintendoEverything.com, and we're coming at you every week with the latest and greatest Nintendo news, just anything exciting and newsworthy that we think you should have on your radar. And this is, I'm very pleased to announce, episode 10 of this wonderful podcast. Let's all give a yay, woo,
yay.
Thank you to everyone who has listened to us for these first 10 episodes. We really appreciate your support. Luckily, we've got the whole gang here today. So we have got the always awesome Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello, everyone.
We've got the truly inspirational Luis Estrella.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got the rock solid leader of the group from behind the scenes, Nicholas Shade.
Hello, everyone.
And thank you, everyone, again, for tuning in. Like I said, we really appreciate you all being here for this very special 10th episode of the show. Just a quick rundown. We are going to start off today talking about Mario Strikers, because there was some big news this week. There's a demo coming out soon, and some of us have had a little bit of hands-on time with it, so we'll talk about that a little bit. We got some interesting behind-the-scenes tidbits news about Switch Sports and kind of the backstory of that game's development. So if you're interested in how games get made, stick around for that one. We're going to talk a little bit about Live Alive, which is coming out later this summer, and we haven't talked about it on the show yet, so that'll be good for our RPG fans out there. We're going to talk a little bit about Temtem, and then we will close out the show talking about limited run games. They have a showcase coming up soon, so we just want to talk a little bit about the physical games situation on the Switch, which is in an interesting place. But let's jump back up to the top of that list and talk about Mario Strikers a bit. There was a little bit of news this week, and one of the big things that folks were a little nervous about was the character roster for this game. What we have seen from the trailer so far shows that there were only 10 characters, but Nintendo did come out and say that there will be free updates coming to this game after it launches in the near future, and that there will be new characters included. Dennis, what do you think of this news? Are you glad we're getting some post-launch content, or do you wish it was all in there on day one?
Well, both. I wish there was more to begin with on day one, but I'm also glad to see that support. I wish it was a little beefier on launch with an additional, plan to, have post-launch support. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I think, for the selection that is available, it's a mostly solid selection. Could it be better? Yeah, absolutely. But at the very least, there's that post-launch support happening, which is good. I just hope it's not something that we've seen with past titles like Mario Tennis Aces, or more recently Mario Golf, where Super Rush, where it's almost too little, too late. Right, I want at least one new character at minimum, at least a month afterwards, at least, right? Like, I don't want to wait another 6 months before, someone shows up, and then another 6 months after that. Like, because by that time, again, and we've talked about this before, where it's like that there's too much happening, I think, within a year, that people who do play a lot of games like ourselves, and especially in our position where we have to review games on top of what we play recreationally, we're not going to be sticking with it that long, at least not as long as we would like to. It's not that we just want to play for 5 minutes and move on, but that there are going to be other games that take priority, right? So it's just something that I want to see more consistently from Nintendo. So, and I hope we do get that, but from the bit that I've played from the demo, which isn't much. I mean, I think if you're playing I think it's called First Kick. If you're playing that, you can try out the tutorial a little bit. And
the training mode, right? Just kind of the basics.
Yeah, and it's really fluid, really solid. And I must admit, I did not play the one that was on the Wii, but I played an insane amount of the one that was on GameCube. Like, my God, if I had to list, the top 5 GameCube games that I spent the most time on, Mario Strikers would absolutely be up there. With Smash Brothers Melee, of course.
Right. Well, and I know, and I guess, just talking about the content in this game, you brought up a good point that, for a game to really stick with people for a reasonable amount of time, I feel like it has to launch with all that content on day one.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about Switch Sports not that long ago. I mean, Louise, like, are you still picking up Switch Sports on a regular basis? Like, are you worried that that's gonna trickle down to these other, to Mario Strikers, that same kind of content dearth?
Yeah, I did not play Switch Sports for a while now. But I think the Switch Sports and Mario Strikers will be very different kind of games. Switch Sports is like the kind of game, it's like a board game that you have on your house and you put under your beds, and you only use it when someone comes to your home to actually play it. And Mario Strikers, from like Danny said, there's this training mode, and from what I've played, it's a pretty complex game. Like, not super complex, but there's a lot of mechanics to learn. I think Nintendo really tried to make the online a little more active, and I think it can be a little more engaging. Maybe not at the level of something like Splatoon, but Mario Strikers remind me a little bit of Mario Tennis Aces, where they made tennis be something completely different with so many mechanics, the slow motion stuff and all of that. So I'm getting similar vibes to Mario Strikers, but with the added fact that I love soccer. Soccer is amazing. I think soccer is already a very complex sport. I mean, you have a lot of people on the ground, and there's all this kind of stuff and physical contact, all of that. So I think the game will have more longevity than that. But talking about the model of free updates, I think my biggest issue is the fact that they don't tell us what they're gonna add. So you are buying the game kind of blind, You know that will be free updates, but we don't know what the characters, if it will be more stadiums. So I think my biggest issue with that model is the fact that they don't tell the consumers what they are actually buying after the initial game. And we are seeing right here, the game, it's a sport where are 4 characters against 4, and we only have 10 characters. So it's very usual to see 2 Toads, 2 Peaches, 4 Marios in the field.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty
Mario,
weird.
Metal Baby Mario, Dr. Baby
Yeah,
Mario.
maybe they could add some of that.
Classics.
But I'm still pretty excited for the game. I mean, it plays really good. It's really great. I love the demo, and I'm excited to play the online test next week.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about that. And Nicholas, I'm curious if you've played this as well. But yeah, so there's an online demo. It's called First Kick, and the online portion where you can actually play against other people and help Nintendo test their network, which Lord knows they need it. That happens on June 3rd through 5th. But if you download the demo now, you can kind of play an offline training practice mode, as Dennis mentioned earlier. So, Nicholas, have you played this at all?
I have. I do just want to mention quickly, cycling back to the characters thing.
Please.
There were people that data mined the demo that found there were 10 additional post-launch slots for characters on top of the 10 we already have.
10?
So,
wow.
It does suck that they haven't really talked about what we're going to be getting much, but at the very least, it seems like we're going to be getting 10 additional characters from post-launch support eventually.
Give us
but
Daisy.
Not confirmed, right?
Not hard confirmed. It's
Not
just
hard
in terms of data mining the demo, they found there were 10 additional slots for characters. So presumably all 10 of those are planned to be filled.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, the Daisy, people really want Daisy in this game, which, I mean, like, I guess I understand, but, like, why Daisy in particular?
Because Daisy in this game, Daisy is particularly iconic. In next level games, usually her animations are amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the game that got her a whole bunch of popularity for the most part.
Yeah. She has
a
a great personality. She's kind of sassy, kind of aggressive. It's great.
Yeah. They're probably saving something special for her. That's why. That's probably one of those things. Like, we don't want to put her in the game right away because when she comes out, we want all the focus to be on her, basically.
Yeah, I hope so.
It is interesting though, like the characters that Nintendo decides to leave out. Remember, everyone was like so upset that Waluigi wasn't in the last Smash game, and you just wonder like what their decision-making process is. Like, they know people want these characters, so I feel like they're intentionally not going to add Daisy because that's the one everyone wants.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Anyways, Nicholas, sorry,
Yeah,
back
sorry.
to you. I want to I want to hear what you thought of the first Kick demo, or what you played of it at least.
Yes, so I did download the demo. I went through all the training stuff. I mean, first of all, I think it has to be mentioned that I'm really happy there is a training mode, because I believe in all of their past network tests, Splatoon, ARMS, Switch Sports, it's always basically been, hey, we're going to throw you into a game and you're going to learn, trial by fire. So the fact that there is actually a way to learn the game before being forced to play it is something I'm just happy about.
Yeah.
You just have a little bit of time to get used to what exactly is going on before you have to actually learn to, win.
Gives a chance for
But-
the rest of us to get on an equal playing field.
Yeah. In terms of the actual demo itself, the training mode, the game's fun. It's been a very long time since I last played Strikers Charge on the Wii, but it feels complex. There's a lot of button inputs, a lot of tight timing you have to do. In a way, it sort of reminded me of Metroid Dread, just in the sense that it also has a lot of individual inputs and whatnot that you have to worry about and remember, and just kind of pull out on the spot. So I feel like there's definitely going to be a pretty high skill ceiling to this, which is exciting. Hopefully that'll make people stick with the game a little longer if they feel they can really see a notable improvement in their gameplay the more they play. The more, if you're going to be able to nail these satisfying actions, these straight passes to charge shots, the game's probably going to feel very satisfying.
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, and also from what I've just seen in the game, it seems like there's a big emphasis on dodging other characters trying to steal the ball from you, kind of getting out of their way. And that seems to add another layer of strategy, very similar to real soccer, right? Obviously cartoonified up to Mario standards, but it's not just all about offense in this game. You really have to be able to manage your character on the field and make sure you are being aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of reactionary gameplay between the dodges, like you mentioned, the tackles, the fact that you can tackle into teammates to get extended tackles, so that you can sort of time things properly to get hits you wouldn't normally able to. There just seems like there's, like you said, a lot of aggressive gameplay, but also a lot of more defensive gameplay where it's not just going to be soccer solitaire, you just front forward, get a goal and whatever. You're going to have to be playing around the other person, which is always exciting.
Some of the pro techniques in the tutorial, I really don't think I can do that in a match.
Yeah.
They are really complex, no? So you have to, they demand a specific timing during the match, so it really is complex. They even, in comparison to the Wii version, Mario Strikers Charge, that I played really recently for a video, it really is more strategic, because on Wii it was chaos, totally chaos. All the characters were hitting each other all the time. You couldn't be more than one second with the ball in your feet. So it really is more strategic. I was a little bit worried that it was not as chaotic, but I actually like it a lot. It feels more like a proper game that you can you can win a match by your experience, by your strategy. So I was pretty happy with what I saw. And just a general shout out, every game developed by Next Level Games has amazing animation, and this one is not different. The supercharged shots are amazing. Every time
They're
a
so
character does they are doing their animations when they win a match is just amazing. Really, it's something I'm already seeing people just posting the clips on the internet because it's so good. It's so fun to see it. So yeah, I'm loving that.
Yeah, that was very nice to see. In terms of
Yeah.
worries of it not having as much personality as the past games, at least that's very much not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
definitely the
the
thing
game,
that strikes me the most, if I may say so.
The game visually is just super crisp too. It looks great, really, really great. Not just the animations, but graphically, it's a beautiful game.
Is the performance holding up? I mean, is it, people complain
Yeah,
about the frame rate of a lot of these Switch games.
Yeah, that's true. No, from my experience, anyways, everything felt very fluid and very just very solid. Like I was very happy with everything. I do have to mention one thing though, because Louise made a good point about how previous games have been very chaotic, and you wouldn't hold the ball for more than 1 second. And I kind of felt that way. Well, not about this, but I started getting a sort of similar feeling, only not because I couldn't hold the ball for more than 1 second, but because I don't know about you guys, but the arenas themselves feel very cramped. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like, I understand it's only 4v4, I get that, but it doesn't feel like there's much room really to move. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I don't know. I just felt like it just felt very like claustrophobic, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more or less the same as previous games. I think the idea is to use that whole electric thing that we have around the stadium, so you can push the characters to these points. I think they probably tested with bigger fields and it didn't work, I would imagine, because of the style of gameplay and all of that. But I think we'll get a better feeling of how the game actually plays when the online rolls out, because we only had there's some small matches on the tutorial, but never the possibility of a full match with all the techniques actually learned. So but that's something. There's definitely something to it. I hope it doesn't happen all the time on the online.
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna kind of reserve my judgment for now. But it was just sort of a slight feeling that I was getting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Actually, when I was playing, it did feel. I don't know if maybe this is also how the old games were, and I just don't remember it, but it definitely felt like there was very limited space to move around.
It's kind of funny because I feel the opposite way about soccer and Switch Sports. I feel like the court in that game is too big, and I feel like every time I have to run across, my character is exhausted. And I'm like, dude, you've only run 50 feet. Like, calm down.
Right, and that's my thing with Switch Sports is like, actually, I like the size of it. My only problem with it is the stamina, right? Where like after 5 feet, it's just like, oh my god, give this person a bottle of water. They can't go on.
It's like Breath of the Wild all over again. I mean.
Oh my god, I know.
Yeah. Well, so if you want to check out the online mode for Mario Strikers, that is available from June 3rd to June 5th. You do have to have a Switch Online membership, but it is worth noting that at the moment, at least here in North America, Nintendo is offering free 7-day Switch Online trials if you have not had one before. So technically everyone can check this out if you want to, but
also no sign up and NDA nonsense, unlike Switch Sports.
Oh, there's no NDA. Yeah, that's why
because there's no sign up
about this game right now.
I still don't understand why that was even a thing. I
don't know.
Were they worried people were going to be like, "What? There's like nothing here," But But that was going to be a revelation regardless. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, thankfully, someone seemed to have realized, hey, this was kind of a stupid idea to have in the first place. Let's not do that again.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, like it's the general public, not the press. That's a different story.
Yeah, I think with Switch Sports it was something kind of different. It was not exactly a demo. It was kind of you had to register to get the downloads and all of that. I think they were actually testing the servers to see if everything worked out. And here on Mario Strikers, I think it is truly just a demo. But I don't understand why they have to make this difference and all that. It's Nintendo.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason.
The thing is, if they're having these kinds of limited play times for this, like kickoff, this demo, I would assume they're still doing network tests, which is why they're doing the whole limited hours thing. I would assume at least. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much sense to limit the hours. But
hey, speaking of weird things that Nintendo does, let's talk a little bit about Switch Sports, because we got some interesting behind-the-scenes details about that game's development this past week. Namely, why this game took so long to come out. Apparently, this was not always the case. Apparently, this game has been in the works for quite a while, and the director of the game, whose name I'm just absolutely going to butcher, actually I'm not even going to try it, Yoshikazu Yamashita, he did an interview and was talking about the development of the game, and they experimented with this game a lot. They experimented with different settings. Apparently, their first attempt at the game, they were like, we thought we were going to set it on like a college campus with like, college level sports. And then at one point, like they had giant robots in the game, and then at another point they were thinking of like a Greek ancient Olympian stadium, like weird stuff, very different than the game that we got.
I would have loved an Immortals Phoenix Rising sports. I would have been all for that. Honestly, that's something you don't really see enough, even though that's where you hear about some of the most iconic sort of athletic events happening, right? Like the
Right.
Colosseums and stuff like that. So it's weird that we don't get that. We have plenty of Olympic games and stuff like that, but nothing that's more historical, right? So I think that's an untapped market that I would like to see.
That's
Next Mario
true.
and Sonic, the Olympic Games.
At the original Olympic Games. they're like doing it alongside people in togas and stuff. I don't know, I think about ancient Greece.
Wouldn't you pay to watch Sonic play like soccer in a toga or something?
Oh man.
I think I would actually pay $60 to play that video game. That would be great. No, it's interesting hearing about the development of this game, because we were talking about, the fact that it came out so much later in the Switch's lifespan than you would expect for this type of game. And I think the thing that I find like most funny about this game, reading the interview, he says that they couldn't think of any more sports to add to the Wii Sports games. And so I guess maybe that's why they went with all these racket sports.
Yeah.
But I mean, why does it always have to be a new sport? Why not just get? I mean, sports are sports. It's just get the ones that are the most appealing, and the ones that have been most played for. I mean,
Yeah.
millions of years, and just be happy with that. I don't understand. Like, I understand you want that sort of identity separate from game to game, but at the same time, it's like it's sports, dude. Like, I mean, unless you're gonna make a new one, just go ahead and add. Like, no one's gonna complain that there's more sports,
Yeah.
rather than just the 6 that we have. So.
I have the impression that maybe Nintendo. I don't know if they made any survey about it, but I think they have this idea that Wii Sports resorts have too many sports in comparison to the original. So I think
Which is weird, right?
Even
This
in this
game has too
interview,
much game.
in this interview from the developers, you could see that after a restart in development, they realized that what they really wanted to make was like retrieve that original Wii Sports experience. That experience really, really casual, where anyone can pick the game, understand what they had to do, and start playing. So I think that's kind of related to that. They want to keep basics, really, really simple, which it is kind of from a objective perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that's more or less the place that they are. And beyond that, we don't know how many sports they're gonna add in the free updates that are also rare. We heard about
True.
golf, but I don't know if more stuff we'll get into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I do get the sense that maybe, because they said that this game restarted development about halfway through. There's the director says, he's like, I felt really bad for all the staff who had been working on the game up to the halfway point.
I'm just imagining a big office, of just like everyone just throwing their hands up in the air, like, are you what? Really? Like,
You just
Forget
got
the
done putting the
robots.
robots in.
Just be like, have you,
Man,
have you
imagine
not
the
learned from
frustration.
Metroid? They should just get
Yeah.
Retro Studios to make that game too,
But I think I love those interviews. I think Nintendo should do more of that. They are really similar to Iwata asks. I think every game should have something like that, because it is fascinating. Because sometimes we get the impression that Nintendo is like this magic place, like the chocolate factory, that we don't know how things work out there. And when we hear them
a great
talking about the struggles of getting it right, how to do the motion controls and all of that, we don't stop to think about it. I mean, at least in my brain, I mean, they are super programmers. They can do whatever they want. And no, the smallest thing to make it work the way that they want it, they go into a lot of trouble. And I think that's the part that I respect the most about Nintendo, because a lot of people say, "Oh, you produce so much content about Nintendo. You are so you love Nintendo so much." Of course, it's not because of the business decision. I think what I love the most about Nintendo is how they respect the developers and the development process. I mean, just the idea of restarting the developments of a game like Switch Sport, which is it's not like a big AAA project. I think it's just that show the respect for the process, for the development, because there are artistic processes like that a lot of the time. Sometimes you have to restart, sometimes you go out of rails. So
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating to see how much thought that is in a game that at a first glance it seems like a very simple game.
Well,
Yeah,
and like,
I agree.
yeah,
I think it's also one of those things too, where like you said, Louise, it's about respecting the development process, right? Because video games are not cheap. They're very expensive to make, and I think most other publishers and developers, when you're halfway through a game, restarting isn't really an option. More often than not, I feel like you would have seen the game just straight up get canceled, right? So to actually go back to the drawing board and restart it, and you lose a lot of money in the process. That takes a lot. That takes a lot of commitment, but again, it takes a lot of respect also, because you also want to make something that's gonna work, because you see something there, you see the potential there, but maybe the route you first went wasn't the right way. So let's go back. Let's rethink this. What can we do to get back up on our feet and make this work the way we want it to work, right? Versus just straight up canceling it, and all that time, effort, blood, sweat, tears, so on and so forth, was all for nothing, right? And I think that's probably the most heartbreaking part, I think, for a developer, which I'm sure all of them consider themselves artists, and really they are. Anybody who creates something from nothing, to me, is an artist, right? So
Yeah.
So that, I think, which is just immensely heartbreaking when, you have a big project like that canceled, right? Even if the game at the end of the day doesn't offer much content, just to get to where it is by the time it ships, that takes years, that takes a lot of time, effort, and that takes, like I said, a lot of commitment and respect to the developers and the people around you.
well, except for all those contractors. I mean, we don't need any of that.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
They can't
yeah.
eat with us. But
No, obviously Nintendo's not a perfect company, but yeah, to your point, this game may not be for everyone, and I think that's totally fine. But I have a close friend, and he came over to my place, and we all played the game for a little bit, and then he went home and he bought the game, and he said that he and his wife have been playing it a lot. So, this is not like they really do. Nintendo does. The fact that they restarted this game, this is not like a 50 minigames party, situation where it's just, take a big company like Ubisoft or whatever, insert big company here, just churning out these minigame collections that are just at a very low level of quality. Say what you will about the content in this game and the amount of it or the variety, but what's here is very mechanically solid, and you can tell that a lot of time was spent putting it together.
True.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess before we move on, if y'all could see one sport added to Switch Sports, because I don't think we'll be talking about this game until golf comes out later this year. What other non-golf sport would you like to see added to Switch Sports? Let's start with you, Nicholas.
Yeah. I don't have. Kind of just thinking about it. The one thing that I think would be really neat is to have some sort of flying sport added. I'm just thinking in terms of Wii Sports Resort, in terms of the kind of lack of Pilot Wings style games we've had for a while now. Just having anything that lets you kind of fly around and just explore, similar to what you had in, I believe it was Woohoo Island for Wii Sports Resort, would just be really fun and really cool. And I guess it doesn't exactly qualify as a sport per se, but just something of that nature would just be really nice. I feel like it's been kind of lacking in terms of
here's what I could see. I could see them doing competitive drone racing around Spacco Square.
Ooh.
Because you have all those buildings, you could kind of fly between the palm trees and stuff.
That would be awesome.
That could be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a sport, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would also be unique too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean anything really, competitive. I mean, even if you're not really sweating,
Yeah.
it's like
Oh, for sure.
I think it's fair enough. So
Yeah, Nintendo, if you're listening and you decide to add competitive drone racing, you can send me my royalties check for the idea. I will
Come
not-
on.
Here's my address. What about you, Louise? What sport would you add?
Do you guys understand what ping pong means? Ping pong? No.
Ping pong.
Yeah, like table
Yeah,
tennis,
ping
right?
pong. Yeah,
Okay.
table tennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know
yeah.
if this was a Brazilian term. So, yeah, table tennis. Yes, that's the correct term. Just because
Got
in
it.
Wii Sports Resorts, it was so precise, the motion controls. So I think more precise than tennis. I mean, there's a lot of sports with nets already, but ping pong. I swear, table tennis is kind of
Love
different
your
to me.
nuts.
Look at this guy. He wants
It
another
hits
racket
different.
sport.
I swear.
Way to be creative, Louise.
Yeah, but truly, that's
okay,
the one
no,
that I would love to see.
No, that's good. That's a throwback pick. I forgot that was in Wii Sports Resort, but that's solid. What about you, Dennis?
honestly, like golf was the one that I wanted the most. But since we're talking non-golf, I love bowling so much, just the way that it works. So I'm trying to think mechanically. I would actually like to see something. Like, because have they done this before? I can't remember, but like curling, I think would be a lot of fun. I would like to see curling, where you just kind of, throw the ice or whatever. I don't even know. I'm not fluent in the in the sport, but it would work the same way more or less as bowling, and I can see myself having a lot of fun with something like that.
Yeah, I'd say bocce ball kind of falls into that category. If you
Yeah.
are a suburban dad, you're probably very familiar with bocce ball. Yeah, I could see that fit in that category. I think if I had to pick one, I would go with it. It's a throwback to Wii Sports Resort, but I really liked the cycling minigame in that game for some reason. I know
I
it was
love
like
that.
not. It was like not the most in-depth sport at all. You pretty much just move the Wii remote and nunchuck up and down and like turn them. But I don't know. I have good memories with that, so it'd be fun,
Or
fun to
if-
see that.
Or if Nintendo could do some crazy crossover Quidditch, would be awesome. Quidditch from Harry Potter, I think that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, where's my blitz ball?
Yeah. Oh my god, I have so many memories with that. That's a whole podcast in itself. Blitzball.
All right. Well, yeah. So Switch Sports behind the scenes, always interesting. We've talked about that game a lot, though. Here's a game that we have yet to really talk about on this show, and it's coming out pretty soon. It's coming out in July, right before Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which we have some folks who are very excited for that game. Live Alive. This is a remake of a old RPG that, frankly, I did not know existed until it popped up in the recent Nintendo Direct. Dennis, I feel like you play a lot of RPGs. Am I right about this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, and not as much as of late, but my entire upbringing in terms of video games, has been, majority RPGs, absolutely.
Do you feel qualified to give us what's the TLDR? What's the basics? What is Live Alive? You have to describe
Yeah,
it.
so it's I wish I was more fluent on the topic but because the game never really came out in the West before. So it's an old game from what I do know. It's an old game from the Super Nintendo era, if I'm not mistaken, that just never saw the light of day in the West. But it was super complicated and did something super unique at the time, where it told 8, I believe, different stories, almost like
Yeah.
Octopath Traveler, except these are in each their own individual unique experience, right? So like you'll have a sort of sci-fi story, a sort of Western story, a more traditional fantasy story, so on and so forth. And they're all developed in this sort of, I don't know how to explain it, like this odd
They're like
amalgam,
vignettes, right?
yeah, kind of, yeah, because they're all developed by different developers too, so you have this sort of collection but it all ties into each other. I don't know if they're doing the same thing with this remake, or if it's just one collective team that's just like, all right, let's take what we know from the original and adapt that for the modern day. But for the original, you had 8 different stories that were developed by 8 different developers and teams, and were just kind of packaged together as this one sort of theatric experience called Live Alive. And so now we're getting that for the modern day, and the beautiful HD 2D remake, something akin to Octopath Traveler, right? Triangle Strategy, and then of course the Dragon Quest remake that will be happening, in that engine as well, which is just a gorgeous engine. So. Yeah, it's hard to explain because again, it's not something that the West is, or anybody outside of Japan for that matter, is too familiar with. But
No, I think that's a solid summary. Yeah, this is definitely, yeah. So this was a Japan only game, and apparently it's a pretty short for what a lot of people consider an RPG to be, right? Like it's not a super lengthy experience, despite the fact that
no,
it's it says there's like you've got the 7 different time periods, and I think there's probably one that brings everything together because that's generally how they do these types of games. But yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, like comparing it to Octopath Traveler, you can kind of see where the influences collide between these two games.
absolutely.
I think the thing that is really interesting to me reading up about this game is that when the game came out back in 1994, I want to say, yeah, 1994, it only sold 270,000 units, and it was considered a failure. So, of all the games to be getting a remake exclusively for the Switch that Nintendo is publishing here in the West, mind you, it's a really interesting choice.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those games also where I think when you have trouble creating new original IPs and content, sometimes you just want to go back and look at some of your legacy content and think about, okay, what's a game that deserves a second chance, right? And I feel like Live Alive was just kind of sitting there in Square Enix's sort of catalog, and they were like, you know what, there's something here. And now that we have this engine and we've seen the success with Octopath Traveler, we've seen the success with Triangle Strategy, and other games that have adapted an HD 2D sort of method, not just from Square Enix, but you see a lot of other studios now that are taking that sort of, let's take pixel art and put it on with a 3D backdrop sort of approach. It's now there's a market there that's sort of more attuned to it and really just sort of craving it, honestly. And RPGs have also, over the last decade, become their own beast, right? For better or for worse. So you've seen the RPG genre evolve, and even something like Final Fantasy, which has traditionally been turn-based, now has become this sort of, action packed series with Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 7 remake, which you don't need. I mean, you can turn a turn-based thing on, but that's absolutely not the design philosophy behind it anymore, right? So,
Right.
but you want to tap into that market that's more nostalgic and more committed to those retro experiences, but adapt them, to the modern day. And I think now that Square Enix sees that, we're seeing that more and more, and they're capitalizing on that. And they're doing a great job with it. So I'm assuming Live Alive that's probably why we're seeing that make a comeback on Switch, no less. Which Switch has always been such a fantastic platform for games like that could be played in both TV and handheld. So.
Totally. Well, and Nicholas, like you have been playing through Octopath Traveler lately, and so I mean, here's another game coming out in this HD 2D engine. I mean, we're seeing them use this engine a lot, and I mean, I personally, I feel like it's great that they are bringing back these older games, right? I mean, it's another form of game preservation, but Nicholas, like, are you excited to play some more games with this kind of art style?
I mean, absolutely. I think it's a way for them to bring back these old RPGs. And obviously, the HD 2D graphics style is not something that's easy to do necessarily. Like, it still takes effort for it to work out right. And I think they've redone sprites for the game, like even for the main characters and whatnot. But it's still an easier way, I would say, to have a remake of these old RPGs than just doing a full 3D remake like we saw with, I believe it was Secret of Mana a few years ago. Where they can have kind of the same authentic feel, and yet still have it be fresh and new. And I'm loving it. It's really, really nice to see. I desperately wish the game wasn't coming out a week before Xenoblade because I really do want to play it. But yeah, I'm just super excited. Live Alive, I mean, I think most people in the West probably had no idea what this was before the Direct happened. Interestingly enough, I believe after the Direct aired, there was a few weeks later, Square Enix started talking about Live Alive and the HD2D style, and they mentioned that they had held like an internal poll essentially to determine what people at the company thought would be the best game for an HD2D style, and out of those, ActRaiser was pretty near the top, which is why we got ActRaiser Renaissance a few months back.
Oh, that makes sense.
But Live Alive was overall the top contender, which was just kind of interesting because, again, it doesn't have like any presence in the West, but apparently people at the company in Japan were familiar enough and, you know, liked the game enough that they thought this was what should get a remake, which, you know, cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I think fan demand actually did play a role in this one, because reading kind of about the history of this game, you know, they basically came out and said, you know, the the odds that this will ever get a remake, you know, depends on fan demand. And I guess this was a case where there must have been enough of it, and it coming at the right time with the HD 2D engine and just kind of the wide, you know, how easy it is to play RPGs on a platform like the Switch. It does feel like the time for a game like this.
Yeah. One kind of neat tidbit about the game, which is probably, if people in the West have heard of it, it might be through this, is that Toby Fox, developer of Undertale, I think most people know the song Megalovania from Undertale, and that song was inspired by a boss theme from Live Alive called Megalomania. The name is pretty much directly pulled from it, and Toby Fox has confirmed that was his inspiration. Yeah. Which is, you know, pretty neat. I think the song itself was composed by Yoko Shimomura, so Live Alive also has a pretty solid soundtrack from the sound of it. Yeah,
that is she's a brilliant cut composer. There, Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I'm just super happy for the game. It is very interesting how similar to Octopath it is between like the 8 different stories and like the HD 2D visuals, which is just kind of funny since I've started replaying Octopath, but regardless of all that, I'm just very excited to be for that game to be out and to be able to experience it for the first time.
Do you guys think
ahead,
that we will see a Chrono Trigger in that style? Because that's one that I never played, and I know that it's a sin to never play Chrono Trigger, but I think it's one that would really work out in HD 2D.
That's a good question. You know, I think if we hadn't gotten the Chrono Cross remaster, I would have said, yeah, there's no way they wouldn't. But it's weird that they would bring that game to the Switch before Chrono Cross. Before Chrono Trigger, you know? So I'm not optimistic about it, really.
I mean, as it is, there's so many old SNES era RPGs that could get a remaster similar to this, remake similar to this, that it's kind of hard. Like, obviously, yes, Chrono Trigger should absolutely get one. Final Fantasy VI should also absolutely get one. We know, I think Dragon Quest III is getting one, so NES era RPGs are also on the table, technically. I would personally love for Xenogears to get one.
You know, in some capacity, those games already are available. Like, you can go on the Switch eShop, but you can play the old Dragon Quest games. You can play the old Final Fantasies, you know?
Well, I don't think you can actually play Final Fantasy VI, to be fair. You can play the...
Oh, no?
From
you can play from PS1 upwards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I might be wrong about that. Sorry about that.
No, didn't you know they're on Steam and on mobile, because everyone loves playing Final Fantasy games on mobile.
Oh, of course.
Yes, of course.
That's so nice to be.
So good they released them twice on there.
Square Enix, ladies and gentlemen.
I think I saw the other day, I was browsing the App Store, and I saw that you can play the DS like remake of Final Fantasy IV on iPhone, and like that's such a specific thing.
Yeah.
It's weird to me that they would port a DS game there.
I never played a full game on my phone, I think. An RPG, never.
It just seems like such an
not an RPG.
Thing.
I'll do puzzle games, but not an RPG. Like I've played Agent A and I played Moonlight Valley. No, something like that. So, but I don't know. It's but a big RPG that's 40 hours. No, you're crazy. I'm not doing that on my phone.
And you know, I always used to think that way. And I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I really think that is changing a little bit because, you know, I mean. A lot of these games that launched mostly on PC and mobile, like Genshin Impact, you know, take that for example, that's huge now. And the same developer, they announced this game not too long ago. It's called Zenless Zone Zero, and it looks like I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like Genshin Impact, but if it was Jet Set Radio, and it's just got just amazing animation, amazing character designs, amazing world building. Just from what they showed off in this trailer, the gameplay looks like stuff that you would see on current gen consoles, and it's a game that's going exclusively, as far as we know, to phones and PCs. And so there must be an audience for these types of games because developers are sinking a ton of money into them.
Yeah, just
true.
last week, Ni no Kuni Crossroads released on the West, which is exactly like you described. It has amazing level of animation. It's really similar to Genshin Impact with that Studio Ghibli style that we see on Ni no Kuni. But the whole issue is that there's a big public. A lot of people are playing those games, but personally, I don't like those games because they are free to play, and usually they have a lot of gacha mechanics where you pay money to receive loot box stuff. So it's the kind of thing that I just want to keep distance personally. But they are really well produced. You can see that there's a lot of budget behind.
Yeah, there's an Octopath mobile game that's a similar situation where it takes place in the same world. It's got apparently a really good story and all, but it's a gacha game. And that just kind of kills part of it for me, but yeah.
Yeah, true.
But you know what? I bet that's how. I mean, that's probably their whole plan. Is like, oh, we're gonna get these console gamers who love these RPGs and get them to sink a bunch of money into these free to play things.
True.
It probably works, or they wouldn't keep.
I mean,
doing
like you said, these games sell. I would assume it's probably a bigger market in Asian territories, in Japan and China and stuff like that. Not to say that people don't still engage in them here, but I'd imagine it probably is very successful back there to compensate for the fact that people here still sort of have a bit of a stigma towards it. But
Yeah.
that's just speculation.
Place your bets now. How many years till we get the iOS exclusive Live Alive sequel that we have free to play? All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of the show, but I think we can squeeze in, not cram in. We take our time on this show. I think we can squeeze in one more topic, and let's talk about Temtem. This is a game that is coming out in September 6th, and I bet a lot of our Pokemon fans are already pretty aware of this one. It's got some Pokemon vibes. It's a monster catching game. It's got a lot in common with Pokemon. It's got that traditional top-down Pokemon view. It's been in early access for years at this point, but the big difference is that it's kind of an MMO. It's online, and you can explore this Pokemon style game with your friends, and I think a lot of folks have been excited for this one, and it is coming to Switch in September. Dennis, you seem, I mean, we know you like Pokemon. Is this a game that has been on your radar?
It very much has been on my radar. In fact, I funded the Kickstarter way back when it was on Kickstarter. So yeah, I got access to the alpha like forever ago once that became available and on PC, but I never touched it for the reasons being because I didn't want to get spoiled on a game or become fatigued on a game that I knew was just going to grow and grow and grow, right? And like I even found my email here. I basically put $30 down into the Kickstarter back on June 30th, 2018. So 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
So you're an investor, really?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much. So I've been waiting for this for a while. It's funny because they say estimated delivery September 2019, which obviously did not happen. But so here we are a couple of years later. But yeah, no, I didn't want to get, even though I had access to the alpha and even access to the entire game really as it's been evolving, I haven't touched it just because I wanted to experience the game from beginning to end, or as much as I could anyways, because I know this game's going to be massive, without much issues, without many bugs, because there is going to be a heavily, online, a big online mechanic to it. I didn't want, any potential, server issues sort of ruining or degrading my overall experience, right? So, once that 1.0 build comes out, and everybody gets to play it at the same time, I'll get my key, and that's when I'll jump in, at the same time with everybody. Could I jump in right now as we speak? Yeah, absolutely. But I just don't. I'm not a fan of early access stuff, really, especially when that early, where it was an alpha, and obviously it's gone into beta, and it's been like that for a while. But yeah, no, I want that full build. I want to experience it, from front to back, and But I've been reading every email that I get, every update, which now they're on like 80 something. Which if anyone
dear.
who's fund a Kickstarter before knows that's a lot of updates, so especially if you're just getting one a month, that's a lot. So I have big faith in that studio and just what this game is gonna be, because I think as a lifelong Pokemon fan, and for people who have been Pokemon fans for so long, or even really newer Pokemon fans, there's definitely a level of contemporary gameplay that we still miss in current gen Pokemon games, and whether that be on a visual level or a mechanical level. So I'm hoping Temtem really puts itself out there and really wows people, which so far, just from what I've been seeing, just over the years, it's been pretty positive. Again, it's not perfect, but it's been overall positive, and it's just nice to have a break from the actual Pokemon formula and take what's made that series so great, but modernize that and actually utilize, the hardware in a forward-thinking way.
Yeah, so the big things I'm seeing that kind of set this game apart from Pokemon, I mean, already mentioned the online world. Looks like there's a big focus on customization. It says you can buy your own house, kind of decorate it your own way, like Animal Crossing style. You can invite your friends over because it's kind of an online game. So there's a big focus on the social interaction. Louise, would you be able to get behind this idea of just this very connected, online-focused Pokemon game?
Probably not, but because
okay.
I'll be honest, the only thing that I know about Temtem is that it has some Pokemon elements. Because I'm not that big of a Pokemon fan, so even games related to Pokemon or that try to follow the same formula, usually I don't follow. But hearing Dennis talking about all the journey from the developers, I really found that awesome, because it's kind of a process that you can follow and see what they are doing. And of course, they are always taking feedback from everyone about the game and trying to make it to the final version. So I confess that right now I'm quite interested to know more about the game. But because of the online aspects and all of that, usually that's not my kind of game. What I think is that Pokemon is definitely lacking in a lot of some obvious areas, and that people have been complaining for a while now. So it's great to see some indie developers trying to create their own thing, trying to fix that, trying to make what Nintendo don't. So I think I just like to see that, and I think for people who enjoy Pokemon in that kind of way, it can be an awesome game.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, people who like Pokemon are probably going to be interested, at least in looking at what this game is doing differently. And yeah, but it's probably not going to do much to bring in people who just are not very interested in this type of game in general.
Yeah. A few years back, when the game was announced, I know there was a lot of... there was definitely some hype. There was just a lot of talk about the game. Because obviously it's Pokemon, but everything, I think it's always 2v2, and it's a bit more competitive, and there's this always online aspect, so it's doing things that the series hasn't done. And I think one thing that's always to the detriment of games like these, and this is not the fault of the devs, it's mostly the fault of the fan base, is that it feels like whenever you have something like this that pops up, people try to make it out to be the Pokemon killer. Similar to how you have games like in Smash, you had Nickelodeon last year, right? And you had people on the internet being like, this is going to be the Smash killer. And I just feel like that's a pretty unhealthy stance to have. Because for one, these games are never going to be the insert popular game here killer. Like, Smash is too popular, Pokemon is too popular, nothing is going to end up seriously putting a dent in it. Especially if it's a smaller budget, smaller scale game like this.
No, we're not going to be watching Temtem Directs,
Yeah. So...
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But I agree with Nicholas, yeah.
Yeah, there's that. There's the fact that in general, it makes people have ridiculously high expectations for the game. In general, I just feel like it's a detriment to the game itself. Because Temtem is probably going to be a very fun, unique Pokemon-like experience. But I just hope that people don't try and lean into it as this is everything Pokemon isn't, and this is just objectively superior. Like, Pokemon needs a lot of improvements, in my opinion. But I don't think this is a good way to go about it. In terms of comparing the games, I mean. I'm just thinking, like, in terms of similar games, similar bigger budget games on Switch we've gotten. What comes to mind to me is stuff like Shin Megami Tensei 5 and Monster Hunter Stories 2, which I think both released last year, which are both, like, monster capturing, monster fighting games, but they didn't really market themselves as Pokemon-like, per se. People didn't go out and see these and necessarily be like, yes, these are the Pokemon killers, because they kind of established their own identity, and they're able to live in that ecosystem in, like, their own little corner without trying to, take some of Pokemon's space and get kind of shut out in the process.
Well, I think something as big as that also, it's hard to, like, go for a juggernaut like that, because Pokemon has something that a lot of other games don't have in general. We're not just talking about games that are similar to Pokemon. I'm just talking about gaming as a whole. Well, no, not just Pikachu. But it's the cultural impact, right? Where, like, Pokemon, much like, like Star Wars, much like, just so many famous things in the world. It's you don't see movies coming out going like, this is the Star Wars killer, right? Like, that's just not a thing. You don't do something like that. You should, if anything, pitch yourself as an alternative, as a, here's this new thing that's like this, so you might like it. But it's not going anywhere, unless it just ends up, collapsing on itself. But it's too culturally relevant and impactful in the world, with way too much merchandise, way too much marketing, from TV, games, apparel, housewares, everything you can imagine, that you can plaster Pikachu on, it exists. So, and a lot of other properties in general, not just games, but anything, it's hard to have that cultural impact, right? And it's rare to see something like that develop over time. I mean, you see, why has Marvel come to prominence over the last decade or so? It's because of this huge universe they've built, right? So now Marvel is this culturally relevant thing. Everybody knows. No one knew who Iron Man was 10 plus years ago. Now everybody knows who Iron Man is. You know what I mean? So it's something like that. Like, stop going for the jugular and just
keep the hype train on the rails, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yep. And to be clear, this is not the devs. This is just, I think, just people in the fan base that get a little too enthused about these games. But overall, I mean, I'm looking forward to Temtem. I hope it'll be a nice alternative, like Dennis said, to Pokemon, and hopefully it does well.
Yep. September 6th, later this year, the game will be coming out in its full release, and we may have some more to talk about when it gets closer to that. So stay tuned for that. And that just about wraps up our show for the week. This has been episode 10. But before we wrap things up, as always, we got to talk about what we have been playing lately. Louise, let's start with you. What have you been playing lately?
The same as every week. Xenoblade 2. I'm still playing the game. I'm always finished with the story. And now I'm starting to do the side stuff. I'm on chapter 9 for those who actually understand the reading of the game. It's been a lot of fun, and it just takes a lot of time. I play like sessions of 1 to 2 hours per day, so it's a lot, and I'm not playing anything else. But probably by next week, I will start playing another thing.
Do you think you are going to be fatigued with Xenoblade by the time Xenoblade 3 comes out? Like, do you think you're going to be just kind of exhausted and, like, need a break?
I don't think so, because a lot of the appeal with Xenoblade is the story. So just the fact that Xenoblade 3 has a different story is enough for me to get going. I think in general, I don't get fatigue from JRPGs, because usually they are so, like, you're doing a lot of different stuff in games like that. Sometimes I get with platformers or action games, but when there's this new story to keep me interested, I don't think so. But I don't know. Maybe maybe I'll be. But let's. For now, I'm still pretty hyped for Xenoblade 3 in July.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. I do tend to get fatigued. I feel like the bigger a game is, oftentimes by the time I get to the end of it, I'm like already like I'm like, all right, I need to go play something totally different. But I mean, hey, props to you. I mean, that's quite the superpower that you've got there. What about you, Nicholas? What have you been making your way through lately?
Well, my answer is going to be
no.
similar to Louise in that I'm still playing Octopath.
I should have guessed.
I have gone, decently far. I think I finished the first of the 8 main character stories. So technically I got a credits roll.
Okay.
Although I'm going to keep going because I would like to complete it. And it's just a really fun game.
Wait, you're saying there's like a lot more content after you beat the 8 stories? I haven't played it, so...
Yeah, so the way it's structured is basically you have the 8 characters. Each character has 4 chapters of their own stories. I've done the first. Once I do all the 8, there's basically just, a few extra side quests, a few extra optional dungeons, and some other stuff I won't say for spoiler reasons. It's not a huge amount of game. It's not going to like double the playtime or whatever, but probably still another like 10, maybe 20 hours, I would assume.
Okay, so, you could fit a whole other game or two in that time. If you
I could fit Alive Alive in, yeah.
Yeah, you could fit Alive Alive in. Oh,
Yeah.
man. All right. Well, we'll check back with you. But you got to get done with that soon, Louise, because... I'm sorry, Nicholas. Well, and Louise, you guys, got to broaden your horizons a little bit, all right?
No,
That's what I was
RPGs only.
Yes. Hey, if I had the time, I'd be right there with you. Dennis, please give us some variety here. What have you been playing lately?
I will actually. Yeah, no, I will actually. So actually, I'll give you a yin yang actually because the 2 games I've been playing have been very different. A couple days ago, I started V Rising, which I'm sure maybe some of our listeners have heard of by this point, just because it came out in early access on Steam pretty recently, at least within the last week or so, and it's already reached over 1 million players, right? Which is huge for a game like that. I mean, that's what you want for not only an early access title, but for such a small studio. Everyone dreams to hit numbers like that, right? It's the new Valheim, pretty much, right? So, but V Rising, I've been playing a lot of that, where you essentially play as a vampire. You can create your own vampire, and but I wouldn't even really put it in the same camp as Valheim, even though there's a lot of I can see why people would on a surface level, but I don't think that's a fair
survival and
comparison.
crafting, that kind of thing.
Right, but honestly, like as I'm playing it, I get more of a nice mix of not only Diablo, but I get a huge feeling of Dragon Quest Builders. Actually, is what I get from it, which I love Dragon Quest Builders. So I'm really digging this so far. But you definitely have to, start from nothing and then grow yourself, as a vampire, and you start sort of, you adapt to different blood types. You can, you start from animals and you grow up to, humans and so on and so forth. And yeah, you build your own castle, which is super sweet. But yeah, it's I put a couple hours into it. I'm really enjoying my time with that so far. But yeah, thankfully you can play it solo as well. I was a little worried you wouldn't be able to because it is an online only thing, but you can create a completely private lobby, and everything is saved like to a T. And that was kind of my biggest problem with games like Valheim, where there was no real sense of direction in Valheim. It was just kind of like, all right, go and exist. And I'm like, well, I already do that even outside of this game, so I don't need to do that in this game. But this one actually has like sort of structure to it, with all due respect to Valheim. But yeah, really been enjoying my time with V Rising. On the flip side, though, something that isn't so dark, actually very colorful and happy, is a little game called Sumire, which I actually just beat maybe like an hour before we started the podcast. Playing that on the Switch. Beautiful, beautiful game. If you look at it, it's this beautiful hand-drawn game, very colorful, about just this girl who wakes up one day and she's missing her grandmother who recently passed, and basically the game kind of takes you through an entire day of, basically you want to accomplish stuff in your life, right? So you're like, well, let me just start off
Well,
something
I
simple. Let me, well, yeah.
Let's
But
not
like,
jump to
let me,
conclusions
Talk
here.
for yourself.
well, yeah. But like, but like, they're like, all right, well, let's start off with something simple. Let's make a list, right? Maybe we can start accomplishing smaller things. So, so you just write just little small things, and you just kind of go throughout the day and kind of accomplish these tasks. And it's a very wholesome game, and it's a game I had on my radar for a bit on the Switch eShop. It's definitely one of those hidden gems. It's very cheap. I'm sure a lot of people dismissed it because it's cheap, but I got a solid 2 to 3 hours out of it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful game. Very wholesome, and you couldn't help but smile and feel warm and cozy by the end of it. It's a beautiful game. Can't recommend it enough if you want something that's short, sweet, and just a very memorable indie experience.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at some gameplay of it, and I mean, it looks great. I love that kind of. It definitely has a painterly aesthetic to it.
It does. It does.
And it's interesting to me. It looks like it all takes place on like this kind of spherical environment, which is kind of different.
Yeah. Well, that's the craziest part too. Is like when I first saw screenshots, I thought it was just going to be sort of like almost like a side scroller, right? This is sort of left and right. But no, there's like a Z axis. You can go front and back, like into the background and into the foreground. It's really impressive, actually.
Wow, that's the third generation of gaming right there. That's would have been a good 3DS game. It sounds like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. All right. Well, no, that's definitely gonna get added to my wish list. I am very excited to report that I have finally decided to dive into Fire Emblem, and I am playing Fire Emblem Awakening.
There he is.
My first Fire Emblem game. Hey, yeah.
There he is. Hey.
Only took 9 years.
I know. About a decade too late. Yeah, it's kind of funny. There's this subreddit called Stuck 10 Years Behind, where people like pretend like it's 10 years ago, no matter what day it is. And I feel like I'm living on that because I'm playing all these 3DS games right now. But yeah, man, I feel really bad about not playing this game about 10 years ago because just every aspect of it so far is just wonderful. I don't play a lot of grid-based strategy games, and it's definitely a good challenge, but it feels very rewarding. You really have to think carefully about not just your position, but realizing that your enemies are just as powerful as you are, and they can take you out in a single hit or two if you're not careful. So it really feels pretty high stakes. And I'm not even playing on permadeath mode, because otherwise the game would have been over about an hour into the experience. But yeah, and it's gorgeous too. I mean, the sprite work still holds up really well. It's a great use case for, I mean, the 3DS's features and creating a really great sense of depth, and you feel like you're looking down at like an actual board game, moving your units around, and it's great. I'm only 5 hours into it, so I've got quite a ways to go from what I understand, but I really wanted to get to at least one of the Fire Emblem games, so I could talk about Fire Emblem Warriors when that comes out. Maybe have a little bit more context. We'll see.
Yeah, it's one of the best games on the 3DS. Honestly, it's just it's nothing kind of mind blowing, but it is so well made. The dialogue so well written, and the level design also is so fantastic. I loved playing that game. I had a lot of problems because every time one of my characters died. So, and I was playing with permadeath, so usually I would restart my 3DS to try it again and again, and I would lose like hours doing that. But I think that's kind of the Fire Emblem experience, so... But I love the game.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I feel like the only way for me to really enjoy these types of games is to turn the difficulty to a reasonable degree. Like I like a bit of challenge, but... having this constant pressure over my head of like, oh, I'm going to lose everything. Like that's just not fun for me. But I know it is for some people. So props to you for trying to get through the hard way.
No, so I totally get it.
Are you not going to do a Lunatic Plus playthrough?
I think that if I did, that might be the last game I ever play, because I think I would just be so stressed out about the whole situation. But yeah, on top of that, I picked up all the 3DS Fire Emblem games because I knew the eShop was closing. I was like, I want to make sure I can play these at some point. And the physical copies for Fire Emblem Fates are getting expensive. So I was like, oh, I'll pick up a digital copy.
They're gonna get crazy.
Yeah. So
Especially if you want that double pack that's on one cartridge, forget it. Forget it. I think it's insane.
Yeah, it's really a shame because there's a whole, for Fire Emblem Fates, there's a whole third game that is just going to be lost to time for everyone who hasn't bought it.
Well, to be fair, is that really such a bad thing considering what the content of those campaigns were? I say that jokingly, but
well, yeah, I've heard people have a love-hate relationship with that game. I'll probably try it for myself in another 10 years. So I'll let you guys know my hot take. All right, folks. Well, that wraps up episode 10 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. As always, thank you so much for tuning in to our strange little show that we all love very much. If you've been with us, please tell your friends. We are on all these streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, so wherever it's most convenient for you. We do have a video version on Spotify if you are watching the YouTube version and you want the best of both worlds. And as always, I should also just give a shout out. Louise edits this video every week on top of his other videos, and he does a great job with it. So thank you, Louise, for making us sound good.
No problem.
Yes, thank you, Louise.
I really enjoy editing. It's a really fun podcast to record and to edit.
And yeah, and we, now that we hit this 10 episode mark, we got to keep going. So stick with us, spread the word, and we'll be back at you next week with what is new and exciting in the world of Nintendo.